Okay, we conclude today chapter 51. The Alter Rebbe shared with us a metaphor of understanding from how our soul interacts with our body. We can understand how God interplays with creation. I'm sorry, from my own flesh, from my own being, from my own existence, I can understand God, how he interplays with the world. So, what do we understand in ourselves? There's three dimensions to the soul. The essence of the soul, that's found everywhere equally. No distinction between the brain, the heart, the arm, and the toenail. The essence is, as we explained, beyond revelation, beyond any kind of description, any kind of parameter, except that it's a soul, of course. I mean, it does have a parameter of being a soul, absolutely. But that's, a soul that's bound up with the source of life in God. Then there is the way the soul is first found in a revealed state in the brain. And then there is the way the soul finds itself in every limb of the body, giving the particular limbs of the body its unique functionality because of the unique light that vests itself in a particular limb, like the ear to hear, the eye to see, and so on and so forth. Okay, that's the metaphor. Let's now take that and understand the presence of God in creation. So, figuratively speaking, the Ein Sof, which means the limitlessness of God, that which is beyond anything and everything, permeates the worlds, likewise, in the analogy that we just gave. And in each world and all of creatures, without limit, an end, which is interesting. Meaning, without limit and end, it's interesting that there is the idea of the ever expansion of this world and the galaxies. So, in a sense, that's the limitlessness of God. That's reflected. So, the essence, the core of God, the Ein Sof, as we said, right? How is the Ein Sof found? Well, equally in the higher worlds and this low world. Higher worlds meaning worlds of spirit, worlds of where souls and angels are there in an abode. There is no distinction. This is what the Zohar says about God, that he, God, is hidden from all the hidden. What does that mean? It means whether it is a higher world that is way beyond us, right? Souls in the world of Atzilus, the souls in the world of Bria, that are way beyond. Their comprehension of the divine is way beyond our comprehension of the divine. Their connection is way beyond ours. God is equally concealed from all of these worlds. There's no distinction. Now, how do you kind of understand that, appreciate that? So there's an interesting story of two Chassidim of the Alter Rebbe, Reb Isaac Homler and Reb Hillel Paritcher. So Reb Hillel was speaking once about Reb Isaac Homler, who was what we call a maskil. A maskil means he was a brain. More than a brain. He was a chassid who just had such a refinement of character and of the mind that he was able to grasp things and understand things in a way that others didn't. So Reb Hill was a great chassid himself. He was more of the heartfelt in what comes to prayer and to infusing the love and awe of God. Now, he also had the love and awe of God, Reb Isaac, but he came more from the brain to the heart. Reb Hillel came more from the heart, through the brain also, but in any case. So Reb Hillel Parcher once said about himself me compared to Rabbi Isaac and his, mental capacity and great grasp of the oneness of God and the teachings of Hasidus is like me and a cat. So he says, don't make a mistake. It's not the difference between me and a cat. That difference is between me and him. Of course, between him and a cat, great distinction, right? No, that's not what I mean. I mean, before him, me and a cat are equal. That's how great he is. So I'm just using that as a metaphor to understand that all of the worlds are equally concealed, with no distinction whether they're a lofty world of souls that grasp some of the light of God. But this, the essence of the Ein Sof, there's no distinction. No distinction at all. Okay, so that's when we're speaking about the essence of God, right? That's metaphorically like the essence of the soul that we spoke about. Now what we're going to speak today further is the other extreme, how God fills the world, what's called memale. And in the forthcoming chapter, we'll speak about the middle ground, the revelation of the light of God, its first revelation, as it is metaphorically like in the brain. We're not going to discuss that today. That will be in the next chapter. So now, as God gives vitality, life, from the essence of God into creating various worlds, various creations within those worlds. There's higher, there's lower, meaning the higher receive more light, the lower receive less light. So it's interesting, the metaphor that's used, we use the term light. Before the Kabbalists, they didn't use the term light, they used the term shefa. Shefa means a flux. So, meaning I guess you could use, it wasn't light, it was like water. Water as it flows down and comes down. So, like the flux of vitality that flows down from the infinite and to create finite worlds and finite creatures. So the term was, again, shefa, flux. And that was used by the speculative philosophers called Chakira. But yet, light is much more an appropriate metaphor, and hence later Kabbalists, that's the term that they use, because light means there's darkness, means the light came out of something. And not only that, light means that there is a ray that comes out from the source of light, which is beyond a ray, right? Like the sun. So, and only a minute illumination. That helps us to understand how from the Ein Sof there's an illumination, a ray, that comes and now is animating, giving life to creation, higher worlds where the reduction of that light is not as great, lower worlds where the reduction of that light, that contraction of the light, the veils, like curtains that veil out the sun, is more and more, that what we have finally is a corporeal and physical world. Now, the Alter Rebbe says, don't make a mistake and think that when God creates the lower worlds where it's veiled and the light is so contracted that it means that the Ein Sof is contracted out. God forbid, that's not what it means, right? It just means that the Ein Sof is just clothed in so many garments that it is not perceived. The only thing that can be perceived is a glimmer of light. But the Ein Sof, the limitlessness of God, the essence of God, is still found within creation. Because after all, nothing can be devoid of Him. It can't be that He is contracted and removed from anything of creation, but he is so concealed here that even that ray of light is so diminished that we don't perceive, and that this is sort of like, this world is like, compared to an animal and its vitality compared to an inanimate object like a rock. So here God is so garbed, so veiled, that even that ray of light is so minimal. But as it says in the Eitz Chaim, that light and the vitality of the physical world, which we see with our mortal eyes as just physicality, really derives from Malchus of Asiya, Malchus being the lowest of the 10 divine attributes, in the lowest world. In that, though, is Malchus of Yetzirah, Malchus of Bria, Malchus of Atzilus, and then finally is garbed in that, and clothed in that, is Ein Sof, God Himself. And it's all united and one with God. So even though that this physical world, the ray of light is so diminished that all we see is physicality, we don't see the light of God that's animating, the presence of God, right? Even the light, forget about the essence of God, that for sure is hidden completely. It's even hidden in the spiritual worlds. But even that light that fills the world, that animates to make a rock, an animal, and so on, and a human, being that it is so reduced and contracted, the light, that we perceive naturally, at least, a physicality rather than the Spirit of God that is animating. So those are the two aspects of God within creation. The third aspect we will deal in the forthcoming chapter, and that's really the key in what we are trying to come to understand about God's presence within the world. So, but what we have right now, God's presence, the essence of God is here, as He is in the most spiritual, sublime worlds. No distinction. He is hidden from even that which is hidden from us. No mind, no soul, no angel, nothing, no spiritual being can grasp the essence of God. It's beyond. But we can grasp God as He fills the world, as He contracts upon His limitlessness, His Ein Sof, to contract upon Himself in a manner that there is a glimmer, a ray that comes into creation, and that we can have a grasp and an appreciation and understanding. And there's distinctions between various creations within the physical world and then within the spiritual worlds. The higher the world is, it means the less there is a veil, less that there is a contraction on the light that fills the world, and therefore there's a more of an appreciation of where the light came from. This world is so removed that we fail to have an appreciation of the source of light. That light has a source. So it's so veiled over here that we just sense the physicality, and not that there's an God animating this very moment, ex nihilo, something from nothing, and creating this reality of me and everything in the world that I don't appreciate because, again, so garbed. The higher worlds do appreciate much more. Like the souls in Gan Eden, in the Garden of Eden. They're appreciating that ray of light. Not only they're appreciating, it's that divine pleasure that they're having of that glimmer ray. That's chapter 51 in conclusion. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? I know now that. Please share with me what you know, what you've learned, put it into your own words so you can own it. Very important that we own the Alter Rebbe's teachings. Deborah says she likes the visible rays. Yes. Which side do you like better, this side or that side? Thank you. Please put 2 question marks, yes, before your questions, so we can appreciate that you are asking a question. Oh, Batya, Vilma. Do we have anybody? Oh, Michael. Oops. So far I don't see any questions. John, I know now that the blessed infinite light permeates all worlds, endless creatures, and hundreds of millions of angels and souls without limit, each level according to its needs. The light cannot be blocked or influenced in any way and sustains creation through filters. Very good, thank you. Excellent. Amanda, Ezra, Sina, Mayor, Michael, oh, there you go. Please share with us, Michael. In the meantime, Anna says, I know now that I'm able to appreciate the Ein Sof through the physical reality, that his ray of light, magnificent teaching. Okay, thank you. Beautiful. Okay, thank you, Anna. Eugenia, I know now that the divine light encompasses and fills the worlds, an all-encompassing light of godly essence, no creation can comprehend. But we are able to comprehend the contracted light of God that permeates the world, giving Hashem a pleasure. Excellent, very good. Yes, we can comprehend that. Yes, Michael, go ahead.
I'm getting my son settled with a bottle.
Ah, that is the essence of life.
Sure, got to take care of the kid.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I wanted to sort of critique one thing that I feel like you need to define in any of these discussions is very clearly like what is the soul.
Right.
Right? Because simply discussing a thing in abstract without like grounding it in any kind of definition, it might as well be a made up word if it has no definition to it. Well, okay,
go ahead.
So then I would ask further, like, let's ask around the question, what is the soul? Why is it even important to discuss the soul? Does it matter? Who cares? I could study a lot of systems. Why would it be beneficial to understand what the Jewish conception of the soul is? Again, caught up with the definition of what is the soul.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? Then, I'd say practically, we'll pull it down more so. Like, more than just like, is it a good thing to discuss? Is it an interesting topic? Like, what practically today can I benefit from having an understanding of what the soul is? Okay.
That's an excellent question.
Well, I have the answers. Just a second. Okay, so I have a simple formula that I use in order to express the concept of a Jewish soul. A practical one that's like a modern context. It's a simple formula that people can apply to have a rough understanding of what's being discussed. Because, look, there's a lot of arcane studies on what the soul is, why, different opinions, how many. whatever. There's a simple modern formula to give a rough approximation of what the Jewish concept of a soul is. And I'm going to source it in Bereshit, Genesis, Tselem Elohim, made in the form of God. I don't want to get esoteric, so I'm going to leave it practical. Imagine a human being and then subtract away all aspects of animality. Anything that would be like any of the other beasts of the field, right? Because we are like an animal in the world. We move around and we reproduce just like other animals. But we are different. We sometimes make it to the moon. We sometimes make highways. We're weird. That, if you subtract away anything that you would look to for an animal, appetite, sleeping, rage, eating, all of the animality, if you were to subtract away all of that, you would be left with some kind of intelligent thing, capable of abstract thought, capable of very precise communications. That would be the start of what Jews are talking about when they say the soul. So then within that, why is the study of that thing practical, like useful today? Because it helps us understand the nature of man. Meaning man does have this really weird X factor where sometimes he makes it to the moon. If he's able to work together, get up savings, develop rocket fuel, understand gravity, understand that the Earth is round and circling around the sun, and that the moon is circling around that, and if you launch at this time, it'll be easier than if you launch at that time. They can figure out all of these things because man is impressive. And if you study the nature of that thing, what is the soul, you'll understand other people better, and you'll understand yourself. So that was all I wanted to say, is like a premise of like what is the value of studying the soul and why different thinkers are trying to understand that thing. That's it.
Thank you, Michael. So just to add what to what you just said. So yesterday we and the day before we spoke at great length about the soul, to appreciate and understand the soul, because as we said in the beginning of today's class, that from my own workings of the soul within my body, I can then also understand and know the ways of God and have a more deeper and profound relationship with him than just one based on faith. So we need to know ourselves first and foremost, so then we know our place in this world, we know our purpose in this world, we know our relationship with God in this world, and we know our relationship with others, like you said, as a result. So it's therefore it's very important. And then if you know thyself, you can be true to thyself. So if you really understand the makeup of who you are, then you could live a real and true life, and which then will be meaningful and significant, and with all of the achievements as a result.
Absolutely.
So yeah, so even before you have accomplishments of getting to the moon, which is a human endeavor, before you can even do that, being aware of yourself and who you are, then can give you the fulfillment of what that self needs in your life, whether it's reaching the moon or just doing another act of kindness and goodness, whatever that might be. So it's very important, of course, as a result. Just to add the essence of the soul, and as we spoke at great length yesterday, so I just don't want to belabor it today, because now we're going to the analog, but thank you for bringing it up, just to make sure that we have a clarity in it, that the essence of the soul is the essence, meaning it's beyond parameters of just describing it as awareness and powers of it, the powers of the soul, of intellect, of emotions, and so on. Those are aspects of the soul. They emerge from the essence of the soul, but the essence of the soul is something that's bound up with its source. The essence of the soul is the essence of our life. And that essence of our life and vitality is bound up in the ultimate essence of life and vitality, which is God Himself. So when we appreciate that essence, and for someone who is Jewish, the essence of the soul is a Jewish soul. So what that means then is that if that's the essence of who I am, just like the essence is everywhere, equally, that means I ultimately should express in my daily functionality of my soul, and in every aspect of my soul, of the intelligence of the soul and the emotions of the soul, should be permeated with the core essence of who I am, and that is a Jew. So for a Jewish person, for example. So that was something we spoke about at great length yesterday, and important that we should emphasize again over and over. So I thank you, Michael, for bringing that up, so we can make sure that we have great clarity on that, because again, knowing who we are enables us to really interact with the world and every aspect of the world and with God in the healthiest way. If we're not clear, if we don't have clarity on who we are, I guarantee you, you will not be able to interact with others, with God, with situations in life in a wholesome, healthy way, because you're confused. So this is very important, and thank you again for bringing that notion. I want to bring up, Ryan is asking over here on Facebook, do you envy the higher realms, Rabbi? Well, that's a great question, and the answer is no. Even though the higher realms, the souls that are in Gan Eden, and the lofty souls over there, boy, do they grasp the glimmer of light from God much more than I grasp it, much more than I'm getting it. They're getting such a pleasure from the divine light that they are grasping, and we are so removed from what they're able to. But that being said, I'm not jealous, I'm not envious at all, because the ultimate purpose is here. The ultimate purpose is here. And actually, if you recall, in chapter 50, we spoke about the gold standard of love. And the gold standard of love was that we should come to a place that the soul is so exuberant, so with such a thirst for the divine, that the soul's almost ready to expire. But yet, you return from the advance, you return to this world, because the ultimate purpose is in this world, to be a soul in a body and to fulfill a mitzvah in this world, and to bring the light of God into this world through the mitzvahs that we do. So, no, I'm not envious at all. Although there's something to be said. What we will get afterwards. But this is the place. We have the opportunity here to bring that light of God over here. Deborah, some teachings say that there are 4 words: emanation, atzilus, creation, bria, formation, yitzira, actualization, asiya. You mentioned 3. Is this the same thing? Yes, there's 4 worlds. Thank you. Actually, no, there's 3 created worlds: bria, yitzira, and asiya. Like you said, a creation, formation, and actualization. Those are 3 created worlds. Then there's the world of emanation, which is not creation that is separate from God, but an emanation of God. So maybe like there's a person what they do, which is separate from that. And then there's sort of like the aura of the person. So that's like the world of emanation. Yes, correct. Ryan, let me bring back Ryan over here. Why do you use those specific body parts? The brain, the heart, the arm, and the toenail. Can use any part. Just, what I use. Okay, yes, okay, let's see, who else? Yeah, just, so Ryan, okay, anybody else has questions here? Deborah, yes, we asked the question. And I want to include everybody in the conversation over here and on Clubhouse, being that there's, you hear people, it's makes it harder to make sure that everybody on Facebook is included. So I want to make sure that that is happening. Andrew, how can you ever know God other than the feeling, the manifestation of God's presence, even in the higher realms of angels who have more of a veil pulled away to see more of the light of God, but even they cannot know God? Well, I mean, Andrew, you've been with us learning, and I would say you know something more about God today than you knew about God, a few years ago or a year ago even. You know the essence of God. You know the God, how He fills the world, and we'll continue in that conversation. And the truth is, we're going to go into the second part of Tanya, which will be 12 chapters that will give us a very detailed understanding, intellectual. Chabad. This is Chabad. This is not merely a feeling of a sense of God, right? But there is an actual understanding and comprehension with our minds. So yes, we can have that. We can have that comprehension, and that's the uniqueness of Chabad teachings, by the way. As others, and even in times of the Alter Rebbe, they fought against this. Comprehension of God. Only the lofty, righteous souls, they can really comprehend something of God. And the Alter Rebbe, being given the green light on high when he was imprisoned because of these teachings, and he was released from imprisonment, and as a Baal Shem Tov, the musician Magi told him, continue and increase with greater effort with the dissemination of the teachings, because yes, even someone like me and the rest of us who are not, righteous, lofty souls, we can comprehend with our minds the knowledge of how God is found in creation. Again, remember, the Ein Sof is beyond us. But how God fills the world, just as the soul fills the body, I can have an appreciation, an understanding of that, an understanding of how the 10 divine attributes of God, of the 3 intellectual, Chabad, Chachma, Bina, V'das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, and the 7 emotions, and so on and so forth, how they are the apparatus, so to speak, of God's presence within the world that we can grasp. We dealt with a little bit here today, but we're going to deal with a lot more as we move forward. But absolutely. Let me go over here to Deborah. Are there 70 levels of understanding Torah? The same concept of descending toward Hashem from the base level, animal soul, Asiya, towards the Atzilus. Yes, absolutely, Deborah. There are 70 facets of understanding any teachings in Torah. The truth is even beyond that, but 70 basic facets of understanding things in the Torah. So absolutely, and we try to gain as much as we can and learn as much as we can in understanding the different facets of. But again, this is Chabad teachings, and it's unique in the sense that the Alter Rebbe had such compassion and love for us to reveal to us a divine wisdom that we can use our minds to comprehend the truth of God, the reality of God within creation, let alone about our relationship with God, which we're not discussing that right now. We're going to get to that, because there's one thing about what God does as creator, and there's another thing about who God is and how I connect to Him. not just to what he does. Similarly to human relationships, many of us connect to people only through the things they do. They do as, the work they do, the accomplishments that they have, and we connect to them through that. That's a very superficial relationship. Or even what they do for me, like, they bring a smile on my face. They bring, they bring something wonderful in my life, and so on. And that's something we need to appreciate and we need to be thankful for. But a true relationship goes to the core of the person. That's beyond what they do for us. And so likewise with God, we have a relationship with God, not just as him as creator, what he does as a creator, but to the core essence of God himself. And that's, so much of what we've spoken about previously, and we'll continue with this notion. Right now, though, we're just trying to understand God in creation, what it means, the presence of God, and how we can have a connection to that presence of God. But we're going through a long, a long task over here. But we are going to get there. We're going to get there. Yeah. Wonderful. Vilma, Batya. And I hope
I think Michael has something to say.
Go ahead, Michael.
Well, I was curious about one topic that you touched upon.
Sure.
What are you stating is the interplay, connection, or limitation between the soul and emotions?
Soul and emotion. Well, so the soul is not the sum total of intelligence or emotions. The soul is far and above beyond that. From the soul comes intelligence and emotions. So they are the revealed character qualities of the soul, but doesn't define the essence of the soul. The essence of the soul, again, of a Jewish soul, is its attachment and being a part of God. That's the the Jewish soul. The essence of the human soul is, as you mentioned earlier, is the Tzelem Elokim, that it is in the divine image of God. That would be the essence of it. So remember that soul is life, it's vitality. So it's bound up in the source of life, in God. And therefore, being that it's bound up, it is by definition more than intelligence or emotions, because intelligence and emotions come from the source of life of the soul. They emerge from it, but they're not defining the soul. Is that clear? Is that clear? Does that resonate, Michael? Oh, I guess so. Michael, yeah, that resonates?
Hi, sorry.
No problem.
Yeah, I think there's definitely truth to say that there is more to the soul than simply intelligence or abstract thought or advanced degrees of communication. I focus on those as indicators of the thing, meaning the study of the soul in determinations of like what it is, can it exist after death, what would that experience be like without a brain to house memories, right? Those are different questions for philosophers and theologians to discuss. I'm simply saying that when we look at humans and we look at like sociologically, anthropologically, biologically, humans are different than animals. It's weird. They function differently than animals. And like the study of what is that difference, that is the study of the soul. So in terms of emotionality, I think like what you're saying is pretty much true. That like there are some emotions that are like raw and like any animal has. Hunger, aggression, fear, whatever. But then there's more like nuanced emotions because I don't know, humans are really egotistical. We get whole complex systems of emotionality. We have ennui, deja vu. I don't know how much animals like recognize those as separate emotional states. Nostalgia. So meaning like, yeah, emotionality, I'd say, is a byproduct of having like an extremely intelligent animal creature. If it was like a pure intelligence, presumably it wouldn't have emotionality. But being an intelligence that exists within an animal creature, you have all these weird nuanced emotions that develop. That's sort of like contextualizing the Jewish soul concept of the emotional framework, like psychology of man, which is, what psychology was. Like, when Freud, the term psychology comes from psyche, meaning soul. He was trying to study the soul, psychology. And like, he had a good framework for setting up a mental map. Like, he would identify regions, like the id versus the ego, which is like, it did create the syntax for modern psychology. He was, not right about everything, but he had some breakthroughs. Right. Good job, Freud.
Yes. So I want to get back because to a point over here to make sure that we wrap this together and have clarity, because you're correct. The distinction between the human soul versus an animal soul is great in the way it reveals itself, right? In intelligence, in communication, absolutely correct. But the source of that, again, is the essence of the vitality of the soul. And the essence of the vitality of, a human being is the fact that it's created in the image of God and a part of God, as opposed to an animal. An animal is not created in the image of God. It's created by God. Everything's created. A blade of grass is created from God. And a constant act of creation, which we're going to learn more about that in a week's time, we'll start. But that's creation of God as opposed to the divine image of God, created in the divine image. And being that there's that distinction essentially, therefore, that reflects itself in the fact that humans have awareness of a past, present, and a future. They have communication skills that we're capable of not just communicating about needs or about pain. We can communicate about abstract ideas. As a matter of fact, we could sit here and talk a whole day about abstract ideas, and go back and forth on that. Animals can't do that. Not in abstract ideas. They communicate. They're communicating perception of whether it's pain or the next meal, or some fear that they have, and communicating that to the herd, or whatever the case may be, but not abstract ideas. You know why? Because they don't have the infinite potential that a human soul has, being that it's created in the image of God. And they don't have awareness of past, present, and future as a result. And they don't have the capability of intelligence that the human being does. But again, all of that is predicated on something, being that the soul, in essence, is a part of creating the divine image, or a part of God, as opposed to a creation of God. So, it's always important to put in that context. Now, the ramification of that is, as I mentioned earlier, and I want to mention again, if the essence of me is a Jew, if the essence of me is that I am a Jew and I have a Jewish soul, then to be true to myself, I should reflect that essence and core of who I am in all of my intelligence and all of my emotions and all of my thought, speech, and action, and all of my functionalities and everything that I am and everything that I do. So that is the bechain, the consequence of understanding it that way. If I just begin with that I am a soul of intelligence, a soul of the emotions, but not relating it to the essence and core of what that soul is, then that could be reflected in so many different ways and not necessarily have to express myself in a way that is in consonance with the essence of my soul if I don't put that into the equation. That's why very important that element is not lost. I hope that's clear to everybody. And I'm going to have to end in a moment because of other responsibilities. But give me, Michael, 1 second. Make sure that I think I've answered all the questions on Facebook. Okay, that just all right. All right, I hope that resonates with everybody. Michael, without getting into, I can't get into too much of a continued discussion. If you just have something quickly, please share.
Okay, just very quickly. You referenced a few times this idea of tzimtzum, that the Jewish soul is, or a soul is a part of God, which I should highlight from like a monotheistic philosophical perspective is questionable, very questionable. A lot of people have problems with saying that like there's a piece of God, because God is not created, whereas the soul, being an aspect of man, was created. Different things. I just wanted to highlight that.
Right. So what? Yeah.
I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying people disagree. There's some serious questions. It's not as simple as just like, oh yeah, piece of God. That's what you mean by soul.
So thank you, Michael. So just I'm not, this is not my idea, and it's actually even the Alter Rebbe. He takes it from the Medrash. The Medrash says that the Nefesh Hashem is b'Yisrael he chelek elokah mimal.
I don't want to get into a debate citing sources about
right.
pieces of God.
No, so
there's plenty of scholarship out there if you really want to get into it.
Yeah, no. We're not going to get. Right. Now's not the time to get into it. We will. We can get into that another time. Absolutely. So the Medrash does say that. So that's where the Alter Rebbe takes it. He adds the words mamish, that it's literal. It's not just figurative. This is in chapter 2 of Tanya, and what he goes on to explain is how do we understand, because Michael's bringing up a good point, absolutely. How do you understand that a soul could be a part of God? What does that mean? We can understand that things come from God, but what does it mean to be a part of God? So that'll be another time. We'll have a further discussion on that. It's a fascinating discussion, and the Alter Rebbe gives us in an intelligent understanding of what that concept is and what that means in a day-to-day kind of living even. But that'll be for another time. But Michael, thank you for the challenge. I love it.